One.
I recently ordered, as we'll get to in the recommendations, a iPhone case that you can put 3 credit cards in. And that's not what I wanted to talk about here at the opening. I accidentally, and by accidentally, I regretfully, is what I mean to say, ordered a red one instead of a black one. And then like 10 minutes later, I went and ordered a black one because I was like, who am I that I'm going to have a red iPhone case? What am I trying to cure something?
I think you could pull that off, Cote.
I don't know. But anyways, subsequent to that, I had to return the red case because I don't want it.
Can't you cancel?
You had to pay $6 to return it. No, it was too late. The Vic saw the light and the cash was made. But, also what have I been doing? I don't know if you've been following this on Twitter, but have you ever applied for a visa to go to Brazil?
So one of the guys on my team is going to Australia. You can sign up for a visa when you land at the airport.
Wow. It is just, man, it's a journey, as we like to say in marketing. You go through a journey of filling out forms. This is the first step, and I won't go on about it because, Brazil seems like a great place. I'm sure they're wonderful people. But to indicate what the most of the journey is about, the first thing that happens is you go to the website where you apply for a visa, and you're greeted. My microphone's dropping. It's terrible. I got this fancy new setup. So you go to the website, and you're greeted by that sad little thing in Chrome that says, "Hey, how's it going? This site's certificate is broken, so someone might be stealing your information."
Wait. It's okay. Nobody at customs will care about your personal information being stolen.
And so it's just like, okay. And now I'm going to tell you both of my parents' full name, my passport number, my address, how many children I have.
Did you do it, Cote? Or did you just mail in a form?
Well, I was doing a little bit of what my buddy here at Pivotal, Andrew Schaefer, and I like to call adulting. I just powered through it. I was mature. I was like, this goes against everything way back when that I was taught by Sam Hartman and every other security person that I've ever been educated by.
Wait. So adulting.
What do you want me to do?
Adulting is clicking past all the security exceptions. Do you really want to open this attachment? Why, yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
my dad. Whenever one is adulting is just sort of like how the other people live their lives, right? Like there's all these people who don't do computer things and they get through life somehow. And, sometimes you just got to do that. You got to go through it, got to power through it.
Oh, they love you at DEF CON, don't they?
I complained. I sent an email I sent a tweet, I should say, to the travel company we have asking them about it. I sent an email to our internal Pivotal people. I told them about it. And then, one of the guys inside said, yeah, I used that form last year, and it was fine. And then I looked at the domain name. It ends in .br.gov. I mean, I don't know what to do. It's like, do you want to go to Brazil? Like, there's this is one of those situations where there's no option. We're going to put this in the backlog for the Zane podcast we do.
No, while you're in Brazil, why don't you just add a couple slides to the deck and just be like, hey guys, I can hook you up with some certificates if you need them, and just kind of evangelize a little bit while you're down there. Get them all straightened out.
Yeah, well, it's a thing. Broken certificates. Well, speaking of the cloud. What is this? This is Monday. So last week, Amazon finally came out with their numbers. And I'll speak for myself. I think they were great. Things were like rosier than I thought they would be. What was your guys' reaction?
It was about what I expected. I mean, and it's monstrously huge, but I mean it's definitely big. I mean, if you look at the market shares and kind of see where people are running the workloads, yeah, it seemed about right. It sure would be nice if they broke things out with any sort of level of granularity, other than AWS. Here's a number. But
I think my astonishment is more probably from my experience being in the Dell public cloud, where sort of there's this perception that the margins, the profit that you make off of public cloud is tough and it's a hard market. But I don't know, they threw off like $250 million last quarter. Cash money, like, seems pretty nice.
That'll pay for a lot of same day deliveries of packages, right?
Right. And some of the analyses were basically that if it weren't for AWS, Amazon as a whole would not be profitable, that they're contributing a lot of cash to the bottom line. And, you know, I am not one of the people who understands money in general or like finances. And my understanding is that the way
or security.
Yeah, or security. Adulting. My understanding is the way Amazon does its numbers is some crazy cockamamie scheme of investment versus cash now. But, you know, I've read several analyses and it looks like there's profit being made off of the cloud.
Well,
Right, but if we go back to the everything store, right? We know Amazon is largely designed to always be break even or lose just a little money. So it seems like that's just going on here. That, you know, should they choose one day to be profitable, they have many levers to pull.
They're just building more levers, right? So all that AWS profits going into AWS expansion.
You know. Dash.
I will say my take on the numbers was like, I thought they were, you know, very good, but I you know, I can't say I was underwhelmed, but I thought there was always the potential for it to just be even bigger. So I was almost like, okay,
yeah,
well, at least it's you know, it's if you will, it's like an A+. But I was just wondering if there was like a new scoring system was going to be invented, and I was like, okay, people were kind of around this.
And then to review, so it's basically like a $5 billion business, right?
Right. and we wanted to judge them on like a logarithmic scale.
I think that's why they finally came out, right? Is like the longer you don't know, it's like the bigger your imagination can make it. So that, you know, so now there's a number, and now we can all watch it, and you know, they're obviously doing really well. I think the one thing it did raise, because there's so many press articles as to be expected, was just it kind of like just highlighted like how people count revenue related to cloud, right? Because there was the AWS public cloud revenue numbers, and then there were various other companies reporting like total cloud revenue or private, public, and that was kind of interesting to see. Just kind of all these numbers together, right? Like, what does it really mean? It's kind of hard to figure out, but it was interesting to see the press focus almost exclusively on public cloud, and then there's some other guys that I think did shed some light on the private cloud, which is really interesting.
So what were those private cloud things?
Well, I think, you know, this goes back to your old days at 451. It's like, you know, because I saw some people come out right away and say, okay, well, we have more cloud revenue than Amazon, right? You know, just very, you know, but they're obviously counting other things, right? Other than just IIS, I can't even say it, infrastructure. You know, IaaS, thank you. Public IaaS. So if you start to throw in, well, what does the private cloud look like, and what do other models look like? And then it kind of just begs the question again, like, what is the cloud market? How is the market going to be defined, and what are people really competing on going forward?
Yeah.
And I thought like today, that the announcement of Amazon is sort of like a defining moment, because it's like, okay, this is a category, all going to count this one for sure. Now, what's the next category people start to publicly announce? And, you know, would it be private cloud? Will it be something else? And then we'll start tracking that, because, you know, I think 451, you know, I think there was always like, hey, private cloud is still a really, really big business, and it's often, I think, overlooked in the press. So I'm just interested to see going forward how those numbers are all reported.
Well, and some of the definition of private cloud and cloud keeps getting redefined, right? So, you know, vSphere is now private cloud, and Salesforce is public cloud. I mean, I'm not sure I agree with those, but
no, I think you're totally right, man. Right, and I think that's where, you know, clearly Amazon's put a fence around now. Okay, this is public cloud revenue. This is how we're going to count it, and everyone's going to kind of fall in line with competing against that. On the private cloud, I think it's just wide open. I think you're totally right. Everyone is throwing in all kinds of stuff, and it's very confusing. And but at some point, I think that gets straightened out, and then for once and for all, we can kind of settle the debate, like public cloud versus private cloud revenue. What's making the most money? Who's growing? Who's losing? That kind of thing.
we just want to know where to spend our time and investments. But that was one of the, I think it was the New York Times, broke out percentages, and I was shocked that they had Amazon at the largest at 28%. That just seemed small. 28% of public cloud usage was Amazon, and then second was Azure at 11 or something like that. Again, like the largest category was other.
Yeah.
Like 43% was other, and other could be, I mean they delineated IBM and Rackspace, and I don't remember who else was in there, but other included, like, I guess, DigitalOcean, some hosted VMware stuff, CenturyLink. I mean, I don't know. You can hide a lot of stuff inside of 43%.
Yeah. Well, did you see the 451 graphic that was making its rounds on LinkedIn? It was this giant AWS one, then had a big Rackspace dot, and then it did have like didn't break out Google and several other vendors. It just kind of lumped into other. And so again, I was just sort of like, wow, I don't think even now we only see part of the picture, right? Like maybe they're a lot smaller, but it seemed like kind of disproportionate. I was like, wow, this seems crazy. All these guys are in other.
Yeah. Having made pie charts like this, I never trust them.
Did you make that one? Were you the one?
No.
Okay.
I was very negligent when it came to market sizing there because, true to your conversation, I always wanted to completely redefine the whole thing, which doesn't really work for market sizing, right? Like if you do a market sizing as an analyst firm and it changes yearly, it's useless, right? Like what you're interested in is progress between things. But yeah, I mean, I should go look up the pie chart that New York Times article has is from Synergy Research Group, and it's sort of, without knowing too much about it, it has like Salesforce in there, right? Which is a weird thing to compare against Rackspace, Google, IBM, Microsoft. So, and it doesn't comment poorly on the slices of the pie, but it does suggest that one has to investigate membership in this pie in the following sense of like, well, Salesforce has 3 cloud things they sell, essentially. They're SaaS. It's probably not about SaaS because that number would be much bigger probably. And then they have Heroku, and then they have their Force platform. But they don't really sell infrastructure as a service.
Yeah.
So then once you have that slice messed up, never mind what the 43% is. Like, so is that IBM slice? Does that include SaaS things, PaaS things, or just IaaS things? Like all of these kinds of things, anytime you see a pie chart like this, it's always a little confusing.
Well, and the SaaSes and PaaSes make it even more confusing because they could be hosted on one of the other clouds.
Indeed.
Like your own Pivotal hosted Cloud Foundry or whatever. It runs on Amazon.
I mean, when I was not doing a good job helping update, so 451 used to call this the cloud. It was CET, Cloud Enablement Technologies, and I was always trying to basically figure out like what's the kind of like virtualization operating system and cloud platforms like OpenStack you would put in here, and man, that stuff was really hard to track. Like it's almost impossible. It's hard stuff, but I think doing a pie chart of infrastructure as a service would actually be pretty easy. There's all sorts of slices you could argue about, but in general, I think people could agree on what IaaS was, and
yeah, but AWS
could have an interactive chart.
I mean, the only part of AWS that is IaaS would be like EC2.
Indeed, and, so this is also a problem.
And the slippery slope is like, well, of course you got to count storage, right? Well, okay, you got to count storage, but what about what about like logging services or all the different ways of deploying to your infrastructure? I mean, Amazon's got 60 products on AWS, and some of them are like the Lambda. I mean, is that IaaS? It's barely PaaS. I mean,
no, you're right. It's deceptively easy as pie. Chart, which is to say, as everyone always likes that old idiom, because making pie is actually not very easy. It's quite difficult to make pie.
I like cobbler myself.
Ooh, cobbler. Now we could have a long conversation about cobbler versus pie. Most people They haven't really thought through. They haven't run the traps on how cobbler is different than pie. It's something to think about for the listener. There's a lot of difference between the two.
You know, maybe we'll save them that tangent for their own time.
And meanwhile, someone also plunked here in the show notes that over in China, Alibaba is a gigantic thing. So they apparently have like almost 23% of the infrastructure market in China, I think they claim, which good for them, I guess. Is that the, am I getting this mixed up? Is that the one that Yahoo used to own a piece of, or is that another one?
Yeah. That's how that's how Yahoo made their money in the.
I was gonna say that's where all the Yahoo's money came from, right?
Yeah, but the thing about Alibaba is they've announced that they're bringing those cloud services to the U.S. They're trying to open, I think it was a data center in Silicon Valley, and then maybe one on the East Coast too. So they, here comes the next generation of IaaS and all the other services. This is just interesting because having to deal with lots of different cloud vendors, it wasn't one that I'd even considered. I mean, in my provincial U.S.-focused development, but if they're 22% of the Chinese market, that's bigger than most everybody else. I mean, just sheer numbers. I mean, that's got to be bigger than most of the American vendors we just mentioned.
So what do you anecdote time?
Anecdote time.
So what do you guys see when you're scurrying about? Are people just all running in AWS that you guys talk and work with, like end users and customers, or is it mixed, or is it some fairyland, or like what? How's it coming up in anecdote land?
Well, anecdotally, I mean, Amazon is definitely the majority of what we see. We still, a lot of our larger customers have reasons not to be on Amazon. Maybe they also run a public cloud, or they compete with Amazon as a retailer and don't really want to put their infrastructure there. So I don't know how representative it is. I mean, at least on our larger commercial customers, but definitely and our like wider community of users, Amazon's by far the most popular. Rackspace is probably moved to third behind Azure.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, Rackspace used to be probably a solid like 10-20%.
So how is the Azure stuff? Is that panning out?
It's working well. I mean, Microsoft is very aggressive on the sales side of things. Like there's the secret about adoption, if you're a big enterprise, is tell your salespeople to sell the things you want them to do. I mean, it sounds like common sense, but if you want, if you're Amazon and you want your customers to consume as much of Lambda or whatever it's possible, you incent your salespeople a little extra to do those sorts of things, and they will do that. Salespeople are pretty straightforward. They're all about making money, and so Microsoft has been incentivizing their sales folks to get people on Azure, and top to bottom, they're doing that quickly, and it's not about Windows consumption at all. It's about Azure consumption, which is why they've been really aggressive on some of this CoreOS stuff, and every Linux story that comes down the pipe these days, Microsoft has an angle. It's because they want those workloads on Azure.
And do you think it's sort of applications people are developing on Azure, or instead of just moving Windows applications or something?
I mean, I can't speak to the exact numbers, but there's a substantial amount of Linux workloads on Azure now. Canonical's been doing a lot of work with them. I'm sure Red Hat has as well. Making sure that Azure is a first-class, public cloud, no matter what operating system you're running, because the real world is heterogeneous, and the new management at Microsoft.
That seems to be the position that everyone that the I don't know, the people who follow this stuff put Microsoft in is. It's not so much like a dark horse, but like this sort of like they got something going on over there. But it's always weird that Microsoft is not as much in the conversation as far as I can tell. I mean, they have been a lot recently, as you were just saying, but yeah, it seems like they've got a lot of public cloud stuff running.
Yeah.
And maybe I just don't pay attention to the right things, but I don't really hear about them very much.
Well, I mean, they've got a massive sales force, and those guys have been working those accounts for years and years and years, and they're just turning the enterprise people like, oh, come over here, and you were thinking about buying SQL Server 20. What year is this? 2015. Why not use the hosted SQL Server? Why let me introduce you to this Azure consumption, and and they have a very good unified message. Like their stuff works fairly coherently together. I'm not saying everyone else doesn't as well, but they seem to have their act together.
Well, how about you, Brandon? You see a lot of AWS amongst your customers?
We certainly do, but I was reading in preparation for our podcast. I actually read Bloomberg's Business Week article, and it has this great little section in here. And this is where I think the big challenge for Amazon going forward is so it says for Amazon to maintain cloud growth, it has to rustle up some new markets without cannibalizing existing business. And then this is the money quote. It's like, since AWS sold their private cloud system to the CIA in 2013, Jassy, he's an SVP at Amazon, says the company has been flooded with requests for similar deals. And I think that is the thing I have seen more than anything else. Like, yes, we want to use AWS. We're still concerned about security. We want more ways to own this, or be more secure and even have our own private clouds. And I think anytime you interview with Amazon or you talk to Amazon, that's a question that's likely to come up with the AWS managers. Like ask something like, what would you do if you've been told no by every major financial company in the world that they're not going to use your public cloud? What would you do? And I think that's the next question Amazon has to answer to really get into the massive market that is out there for them.
Well, it seems like they're skipping the first step. Like, I mean, private cloud is great and all, but what about VPC++, where they could, dedicate machines to customers, like a hosted, a co-load AWS private cloud. I mean, that might be more palatable and easier. At least, that way they could tell the customers, like, you're not in a public cloud. You're in an Amazon data center, and you got your own boxes, and you're running the Amazon tools, but you're not on the same machines. I'm sure they've run those numbers.
Yeah, no, I think you have the vision and technology aspect competing against just with what the customer says. And this is, classic product management dilemma. Is like, you go into the customer in New York City, any financial institution, they'll probably say, hey, we like what you did with the CIA, and we have lots of money too. We want you to build that. And so do you say yes, right, and kind of like go for the money? Or do you say, actually, I think there's more money if I can change your perception over time and just do what you said, VPC, or a more strict, secure VPC? And that, I think, is the question then. If Amazon answers that, right, then there's the potential for it to be even more enormously big than it is. But I think this is where, to your question earlier, this is where Microsoft is there, and Google, and IBM, and everyone's going to show up and say, like, we'll do that for you. Will
Google do that? I haven't heard anything about Google.
Oh, you're right. I don't know about Google.
I mean, that's the thing about Google is,
I don't know. What are they doing? I think, aren't they just doing search and cars?
Exactly. And, I mean,
searching cars.
Well, Cote was asking about it, and there was a lot of noise around Google, and then things got kind of quiet for a while. And, now they're all excited about, Kubernetes and putting money into CoreOS for Kubernetes, but it's also kind of like, not a lot of real enterprises run that stuff. And, maybe, you're making a land grab for the next generation of tech by trying to get everyone to do what you do today. But in the meantime, people still going to SAP. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think that's we talked about that in the last episode. It's that's the whole conflict between traditional cloud management software and, data center whatever you want to call it, data center operating system or Kubernetes, that whole other way of looking at distributed applications. And I think, I don't know, that's like an impending fight that's yet to come, right? Is like, is that the future, of the unicorn companies, or, just to your point, is it VMware and ERP here to stay for a long, long time?
Well, and it seems like some vendors like Microsoft, at least, are willing to say, well, okay, we'll do it your way and our way, and we'll own both stories. And you want Linux, we'll give you Linux, and you want Windows, well, of course we do that. And you want it on-prem, we'll do that too, and we'll just back up the money truck and you fill it.
Yeah, no, clearly you think, VMware, right? I mean, they had an announcement around a new Linux container. It's like, yeah, VMware seems like, man, you talk about doing it anyway. They will give it to you any way you want it, and that seems like an ideal position for them, right?
As long as you pay.
Yes, it's like there's almost no end in sight the ways that you can deploy something on VMware at this point.
So you were looking into that, right, Matt Ray? How's the what do they call it, Photon? How's that compare with all the others? It seems like
all the other stuff.
To frame it up, it seems like you got these containers running around, right? And it's basically like you get your hand slapped if you call it virtualization.
Yeah.
But it's a new way of packaging up processes running on these damn computers. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're like, well, what tends to happen with computers, whether they're virtual or containers or whatever, is you kind of got to manage all of that stuff. Like you got to run them in something and manage them, and then you have all these different things with funny names that are looking to manage containers out there. And then the people come at it from the operating system angle, and then there's kind of like the cloud platformy kind of angle, like we do at Cloud Foundry, and then there's the pull the orchestrator out on its own mesosphere, Kuber whatnot angle. Like there's all these different approaches, and it is I don't know. So if that description of the milieu is correct, like how do you think the Photon thing fits in?
So the Photon thing's kind of interesting because if you look at it like first glance, which is all I really gave it, I opened an issue after first glance because they didn't have a license on it. Troublemaker, yeah. Well, I was like, what is this? What can I do with this? They fixed that bug. At first glance, it looks a whole lot like Red Hat's Project Atomic. There's not. I was asking the community manager for Atomic, like, hey, is this related? And he the next day there was a very large Red Hat blog post explaining like, hey, why is this different? Why is this not why are we not sharing code between Red Hat and VMware? And I think I just explained that because it's Red Hat and VMware. But those projects are kind of similar, where it's a container manager. It's not a hypervisor because it's by definition it's not virtualizing an operating system. It's a it's a container manager. So that space is kind of there's a lot of different things that look like that. So Photon, Atomic, Canonical has one called LexD. They're trying to call theirs a light visor, but it's
by time for the new Star Wars film.
Yes, I think that's what Geordie LaForge uses.
I'm trapped in the holodeck.
But anyway, I mean, there's still the whole security of containers. You got to have something that's secure to manage them, and then you still want to have that really, really lightweight virtualization layer that's not virtualization. And so,
and Lord knows you're going to need an event log, right?
Oh yeah.
When do you get an event log? When's that coming?
Patches accepted, I'm sure. But the Photon, it looks like the others, but since it's from VMware, that in due time it's going to become a line item on a purchase, and they're going to integrate it into every single VMware product they have, and it's going to work well with.
Right.
I guess
it's basically like it's like a Linux distro of some sort, tuned to run containers better. Right?
Yeah. I mean, ESX used to be a Linux distro,
yeah.
And now it's its own standalone thing.
Right. And then there was other announcements. I actually watched this thing, so I should probably remember all this stuff. I'm apparently part of a federation, but yeah, there was. We also we formally announced this Lattice thing that we work on at Pivotal, which is sort of one of the core parts of our engine. Lets you run a lot of Cloud Foundry stuff on a laptop, among other things, and it's also the Elastic PASI part that we're working on. And then they had the Mesos guy up there also talking about working with VMware, and the Core OS guy. It was nice. Their little press conference thing there. It's good stuff.
Is Lattice, is that part of Cloud Foundry, or is that a Pivotal project?
I should know that, but I don't. I think
Sorry,
I think at the moment it is like an open source project, but I could be completely wrong about that. I have queued up in one of my Pivotal Conversations podcasts to talk with someone about that, so I can learn about it. Yeah, I think if you go to I forget what it is, like lattice.cf or something, but there's a super fancy web page you can go to, and if you follow along on Twitter, there's all these people installing it and getting their jollies with it. So apparently it's a thing that works out. That's great.
So on a slightly different topic, though, I noticed when VMware made their announcement, I kind of feel like the word container has reached parity with Docker. For a long time, I thought people they said Docker and they were really talking about containers, but that's all they would say. And it feels like the collective industry has fought that back. And I'd say now I see container 30% of the time, where I used to be 100% of the time, I just see Docker, which I think is an interesting trend. The world has sort of united in trying to put Docker, if you will, in its place, which I just think is an interesting ongoing battle in the arena of mindshare and marketing.
Kleenex versus tissue, man.
Exactly, but I thought for a while I felt like it was gonna go Kleenex to Docker, but it's okay, enough guys got involved here that they've made it generic again.
Yeah, I mean the Photon announcement, it's Docker compatible, it's Rocket compatible, and it's Warden compatible. The Pivotal, the Cloud Foundry container format. So yeah, it's everyone's fighting the fight, and whenever they talk about Docker, it's always Docker the container, not Docker the
the tool chain and all that.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. The pass, .cloud 2.0.
That's right. Well, as we discussed last week, it's because unless you work at Docker, you're unsure if you want them to succeed or not. You like the technology and the ideas, but you're a little leery of if they're going to come steal your lunch or not. Something always good to be paranoid about.
Changing
who doesn't like lunch?
Tangentially, next week is DevOps Days Austin, right?
It is.
Yeah, maybe we should do Are you going to that, Brandon?
I'm going to be out of the country next week, so
yes.
I guess we'll have to hold it down. So,
did you have to apply for a visa? How did it go?
I did not. I'm going to Germany. They just said, "Come on."
Oh yeah, they're just yes, please come.
Come on in. Just don't stay too long.
Yeah. So I forget which day I'm talking, but I'm giving some talk, Cote's
What are you
industry.
doing, Cote? Are you doing
It's just sort of like an update on the one I did last year.
The analyst presentation?
I haven't put the presentation together yet. So
don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone. Well, I was just going to suggest that maybe we could grab one of the distinguished guests of DevOps Days Austin,
yes, you
Willis
should.
or
somebody. Who I think I think
they'll give away a prize. If someone comes up to Cote and says some magic words, is there?
Well, I'll tell you what. I have a box full of hoodies that I can give out.
There you go. For the people that come up and ask for a hoodie.
Yeah.
They'll be hoodie worthy.
Yeah, and we have a booth. We have a table there. Have you ever worked a table there, Matt Ray?
Hundreds of times.
Yeah. So
at DevOps Days Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've worked.
So give me some tips here. What do you do? What do you do with the table at DevOps?
Wear comfortable shoes.
Well, people are going to come up and they're going to be like, "So, what do you guys do?" You're going to have the healthy number of people who hey, they work in this industry and they don't know who you guys are, and you'll need to be ready to talk at the high level and the low level. So make sure you have somebody to hand off the low-level conversation. So when they're like, so this Lattice CF stuff, where does
Yes.
that exist? And you'll be like, let me introduce you to so-and-so.
Yeah.
But, so there'll be a lot of just like, what do you guys do? Give me swag. And, they're probably not listening. So save the hoodies from those people.
Yeah. I'm a regular Johnny on message when it comes to that kind of stuff. Very good.
But, it'll get kind of quiet in the booth area during the keynotes and the presentation. So I wouldn't hang around. I mean,
yeah. That's what I've observed over the years, that not only the Austin but various DevOps Day stuff is the the table action is it has bursts, but you don't really need to concern yourself with sort of hanging out constantly.
Yeah.
But we got one of those like pop-up banner things.
Oh,
Is that
yeah.
something?
Nice.
Yeah, we'll have one too. So
Most importantly, Cote, I would just say answer every question with a question, because it will be like, hey, what do you do? And then you follow that with, I work at Pivotal. What do you do, and what do you do there? Because that will give you a lot of information about what to then talk about.
No, that's good. I like that. I can, and then I could use the 5 whys. Why?
Why do you work there?
Matt Ray was giving you the clue. It's like you basically need to delegate or push away quickly. Okay, here's your free charger. Go away.
Oh yeah.
Or we should talk later. Here, come out to my car. I'll get you a hoodie.
Yeah. So the cost of getting someone to go away is $4.25.
Hey. I have a box full of these migrating to cloud native application books. So I got those. This little 50-page book. Yeah. I have some car. What do you call those? AC adapter things.
That's good. That's a good one. Yeah, AC adapter charger.
And for those with kids, I have these little rockets with rubber bands.
Oh, well done. Perfect.
You can shoot across the room.
Yeah, you're prepared. You've got it for every audience. It's going to do well.
Yeah, I tried to get some T-shirts, but we had a regular bike shed moment. There was just like lots of debate about the T-shirts, and I was like, I'm out. Right? I won as most people, actually I'm in the home office here. I wear T-shirts at home, but outside of home, I'm not a big T-shirt wearer except as an undershirt. So like I could give a fuck, right? Like I don't like stuff on T-shirts or T-shirts in general, but I think that's a thing. People enjoy that.
Yeah. So and T-shirts are surprisingly expensive on the swag. Maslow's hierarchy of swag. It's like. Because I was like, T-shirts for everybody and save the chargers, but those chargers are like, they're like $4 a pop, and T-shirts are like 8 or 9. So
yeah, it's absurd. Yeah. I mean, probably not absurd, but it is kind of inconvenient. So yeah, I think actually my talk, if I remember the abstract, is it's the thesis is thesis. That's a word. We're about to see a bunch of mainstream people start doing DevOps. So what's that going to be like? And I think, for example, Gartner has a DevOps market sizing out there. Have you guys seen that? And there's, I forget if it's IDC or Gartner, but there's some prediction that 90% of DevOps projects are going to fail.
Wow.
I don't know.
That seems kind of pessimistic.
Yeah. Well, that's the pessimistic message that you always get at DevOps is like, it's culture. It's hard. If you don't get your culture right. I mean,
Agile went through the same thing, and then now either everyone's doing it or no one's doing it, depending on how.
And everything fails eventually.
That's right. Entropy kicks in.
Entropy kicks in, and everyone's dead. So I too have some talks at the.
Oh yeah, what are you talking about, Matt Ray?
I've got
Matt Ray explains it all.
I've got an Ignite. I think it was originally a Lightning, but somehow it's now listed as an Ignite, so I have to redo my unwritten slides, where I'm telling people how to write a resume.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a short talk, 5 minutes, but I've seen a lot of bad ones. So right now I'm going through the most important cycle of your slide deck is where should I use as my sources for pictures? So
yeah.
Yeah.
Matt Ray's talk is titled "Stop Wasting My Time with Your Bad Resume."
Yeah, pretty much.
It's actually a group therapy for Matt Ray. I don't want to see any of you do this, please.
Yeah,
You're
I
not
just
joking.
last week I posted another one of these like how to brief analyst presentations that I've done, and I guess I don't have this problem now. But yeah, that's the reason I would do those presentations. It's
Yeah.
just like how to make my life better. But I gave a little talk to our team internally about briefing analysts, kind of for big companies. I ever recorded one on briefing analysts for startups, but this one was more geared towards large companies. And yeah, I hope people read that who are briefing analysts.
I
Let me
just-
guess.
A
It's,
lot-
you
a
want
lot in
lots
there.
of slides, a lot of slides, a lot of
Yeah.
education about the problem, what it
Yeah.
is that they're doing. That's always the best way to
A
start.
lot of text on slides.
A lot of text,
Paragraphs.
Yeah.
That's actually good for analysts. Like one of my things about presentations for analysts is it's not a presentation; it's a document. So
Yeah.
because think about the alternative. There's always more than one alternative, but let's be duopolistic. Is that a thing? I oftentimes would get a presentation that was obviously the VC pitch. And I'm like, I am not a venture capitalist. Like
You're like, I got no money.
yeah, I don't want to see a stack of round rocks like stacked up together, achieving some sort of harmony, right? And I don't want to see one word and one picture on a slide. That does nothing for me, right? And you definitely, what is this article? Software is eating the world. I've never heard of that. Tell me more.
Wait, who is this Anderson? Yeah.
I was not aware that data is growing exponentially every year. Could you give me some
Gotcha.
sources for that? But anyways, yeah, but because I don't know, the presentation really is like a document. Like they're just looking
Yeah.
for information and things like
Because
that.
you're gonna.
Coach A, have you ever written out the? This would be a way to really push your agenda forward. Be like, create the Word doc, Google Doc template. Be like, this is the template that an analyst wants.
Oh, like a Mad Libs?
No, but literally just be like, yeah, it's like at the top. This is
Analyst
like
Mad
product
Lib.
name, one sentence description, right? Pricing, top 3 competitors, just like, and this is like what you want. Because, like, when you need to
I
write
had
your
I
report,
had
Go
a
ahead.
form of that I didn't do. It was actually my predecessor at 451. I think Rachel Chalmers who typed this up, and she wrote a. There was an internal document at 451, which is like how to take briefings, and part of it was an outline of typical questions you would ask and things you want to know. And so I put that in that briefings for startup presentation. But it's actually pretty good. It's kind of like if the vendor actually just filled this out and sent it to you, you wouldn't really need a briefing. Well, I mean,
Well, they can give it to you in
you would-
advance, right?
yeah,
And
you
then
would
could ask
need, like-
questions. Yeah.
right.
Well,
You would need like a 30-minute briefing that was sort of like hanging out talking with each other. But it would kind of be the equivalent of like online dating optimization, right?
Yeah.
Like it would just kind of like get all the background material you needed, and then you could kind of just check each other out or whatever it is people do.
I mean, it's kind of related. We keep talking about the A16Z podcast had a couple about working with your board, and
Yes.
probably most people like eyes just glazed over when I said your board, but they talked about the decks you prepare for your board, and don't. It's essentially like give them all the reading in advance, because you don't want to waste their time going through the deck. You want to waste their time with questions.
Oh man, I worked several times when I was at Dell putting together those materials. That is, I don't work at Dell anymore. that is an intense process. It's just like it's like you remember I think it's the second season of what is it, House of Cards, where they're trying to put together. No, it's before he becomes president. He has that big conference room with all the interns.
See, I haven't even watched it. You just spoiled the first 2 or 3 seasons for me.
and well, spoiler alert, he becomes president. I don't know if you haven't encountered that yet.
I have.
Anyways, and it's just like this torturous process of creating like roughly 200 or 300 pages that are like perfect and are very like, it's insane. But the end result actually, like, I remember I worked on several, not only for board presentations, but for various things like this. And it is like, it's pretty nice afterwards. You do have this really perfect, like, concise thing that's helpful. It's like people in those positions, like at high level executive and board positions, like get a lot of good information just piped directly into their brain.
Yeah. Be nice if the rest
Man.
of us got it.
It's the creating that stuff is awful. Like
Yeah.
it's no good.
No.
No good at all. Well, let's do one more news item, Matt Ray, before
Well,
we get to recommendations.
I have 2 talks. I
Oh.
DevOps days.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Writing resumes. Now, what's the other one?
That's the short one. The other one is I'm giving a configuration management versus containers talk.
Oh yeah.
It's not a talk. It's a debate.
Now, unfortunately, we can't arrange to have Brandon there. So my prediction is this is going to be a regular kumbaya panel. I mean, you got to have a Brandon there who'd be like, no, only one of these wins. Only one. They do not work together.
It's true.
You only need one of these. The other one must die.
It's true. That is actually true. I was going to say that this title should be, this panel is stop asking me this question. Thank you. I've answered this question 50,000 times. Thank you.
Now, that joking aside, Matt Ray, how do you think it's going to pan out? What's the discussion going to be?
Brandon might be pretty close. I mean, it's like, so you're not going to track anything you're doing. You're just going to throw a bunch of code into a box and then you're done. Good luck with that. Have fun, right?
Yeah.
Good luck. Call me in 6 months when that doesn't work.
I mean, yeah. We'll see. It will probably.
Well, who else is on the panel? Is there someone going?
Yeah,
some hardcore container guys.
The other guy is an evangelist for a container company, not Docker, not.
Well,
John Willis is going to be here. You should get him up there.
Yeah. Well, he has a vested interest in both things. Turns out.
Perfect.
John Willis just up there, just totally conflicted.
Not really. I mean, you got to figure, his company was bought by Docker. I assume he did fairly well with that.
You know where his allegiance stand?
I'm just saying.
He's been doing lots of tutorials every week.
Yeah.
He's doing his usual excellent work around all that.
Kote, you should chime in. You should make sure there's some at least some.
There's some conflict.
Yeah, I mean that's the only way the panels are good.
I've been listening to books recently, Brandon. Thanks to you and John Willis, who encouraged me to listen to books, and I started listening to that 5 Dysfunctions of Team Management.
Right.
Oh man, and that sounds exhausting. Having to conflict with everyone all the time.
Yeah.
So tiring. Like, does anyone actually do that?
It's so much easier when everyone just agrees.
Yeah. Oh, so exhausting. But no, it is true in this case. Like, I think conflict would be healthy. And anyways.
Yeah.
Well, I would say let's end on a positive note on that note. It's like the conflict can actually be very educational. So to Matt Ray,
yes,
if it highlights the pronounced differences and why your position is maybe better, that means more people won't ask you that same question. So maybe be more aggressive than you normally would. That's my advice.
Well,
that makes sense. Well, why don't we go ahead and shoe in some recommendations here? I'll be quick with my recommendation. I have 2 things. One, I last week I decided I would go all crazy, and I got one of these iPhone cases that the video viewers can see that you can put 3 credit cards in.
You should get it in red.
Hey, it's the Q card case. And I thought, I'm always freaking out about needing a wallet and all this stuff, but screw it. I'm just going to simplify my life. And so far it's worked out well. I've got a driver's license, a MasterCard, and an ATM card. And the other day I was about an eighth of the way onto Costco, and I realized I'd forgotten my Amex and Costco card, and I had to turn around and pick it up. But my life went on. So that's what I recommend. Also, I've been using this little app called Line In from the Rogue Amoeba folks. Lets you listen to yourself when you're talking for people who do podcasts out there, which is nice. It's a little weird to get used to, but it's free. So what do you want?
Does it help me get that sweet podcaster voice like you?
Absolutely. All right, what do you got there, Matt? What do you recommend this week?
Well, I got one of my favorite bands has a reissue of a live album from 1998, which
Led Zeppelin.
I think they were on hiatus back then, or maybe half dead. I'm not sure, but no, it's Bedhead Live 1998. That was record day release or whatever you call it. Go ahead. We'll link it up in the show notes. But also a plugin that I want to use, but I don't use, called Markdown Here. It lets you do Markdown in your email in Gmail, and then it renders it to HTML. But I just don't do HTML in mail.
I think I used that a long time ago. Yeah.
Oh, really?
It was interesting. Yeah, it takes over your text areas and things like that, right? Yeah. Good
But
stuff.
I'm always like text and then go back to text.
Yeah. Love that text. How about yourself, Brandon?
Yeah, I spent the last week out at RSA in San Francisco, hanging out with all the security people, and IBM announced a free tool that I thought this audience may be interested in. It's called IBM Xforce Exchange. So you can go out for free. Go to exchange.xforce.ibmcloud.com. Put that in the show notes for you. But you can search. It's kind of cool. You can search on all the different IP addresses and applications to see which ones are causing you trouble and doing bad things. And lots of people share information about bad things they find on the internet. So
Gov.br.
you could,
Yeah.
if you're so inclined, if you're getting a lot of traffic or wondering what this IP address is doing, you can go find out more about it. So check it out.
Your security nozzle. I like it. Well, that's great. Well, just as one quick sponsor, so the Cloud Foundry Summit is coming up right after Mother's Day. Well planned there, May 12th and 13th. And if you go to cfsummit.com, we'll put this in the show notes, but you can get 25% off if you use the code COTE to register. And I know everyone's always interested in how things commercially work here in podcast land. So far, we've gotten 2 signups. So good job, listeners.
Nice.
It'll be great to see you there, but it'll be fun. You get to see how people are fitting into this wacky container, cloud native, cloud world, what they're up to. That's the great thing about the Cloud Foundry Summit. I just had lunch with a guy who works for the GSA, the big government centralized organization at their 18F outfit today. And he's giving a talk there going over how they use Cloud Foundry to help just make applications and software in the government world better. That's good stuff. So just go to cfsummit.com and you can use the code COTE to get 25% off. And with that, thanks for listening. As always, we're Software Defined Talk. You can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com, or what is this, episode 31? Matt Ray, the man who knows everything. You can go to cote.31. That's right. cote.io/SDT31 to see the show notes for this episode. And thanks to everyone who's written in and told us that they listened to the episode. It's preventing me from crying right now, so I appreciate it. Thank you. And we'll see everyone next week.
Thanks.